says that we're started over here. Does that look like that's actually starting?
Yeah, there is such a reminder. Yeah.
Started?
Yes.
Oh, wow. All right. Cool. Welcome to Data Science Club number 15. Sorry if you heard us muttering for the first few minutes. We're trying a new platform this week that lets us stream out to a few different places all at once. So if you're seeing this on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitch, as well as YouTube, then good on you. And welcome to the Data Science Club. Today we're going to talk about data science using R. For the first 14 videos, we did stuff with Python. Python is really powerful. R is also really very powerful. I saw somebody post today that 70% of data scientists prefer Python and 30% prefer R. But I think that's probably maybe a little bit overweighting it, and then also just ignoring some of the other neat things about R. But R is another really popular platform other than just Python, and so we're going to also try to mix in videos with R, and then we'll also mix in some videos with MATLAB later on as well, because they're all really useful in this space.
Yeah, and R has traditionally been a very useful language for statistical purposes, but all the new libraries that have come in has made it equally powerful for data science stuff. And yeah, like William was mentioning, almost 80-90% of the data scientists either use Python or they use R.
Yeah. And a lot of times what comes to my brain first when I think of R is just how pretty the visualizations are. So hopefully in these tutorials that we'll do, you'll get a chance to see that as well. But let's dive right into it. So we're going to take a look at this tutorial on machinelearningmastery.com, which this is your first machine learning project in R step by step. And so we're going to use this. Jason Brownlee here writes a lot of tutorials. They're always very nice. If you're looking for almost any topic, this is a good website to take a look at because he has a lot about machine learning in a lot of different languages on here. So it's a good resource to have regardless. So we may split this up into two videos. We skipped last week accidentally. We just got too busy to get one of these in. So we're going to do two videos this week. So the first one may be a portion of just loading the data set and getting all the packages installed. And then the second one, we may dive more into the machine learning. If everything goes really quickly, we'll just find a second tutorial in R and put that up as well. But let's get started.
Yeah, so in this tutorial we are going to, this is basically like the hello world example of machine learning in R. So he is going to talk about downloading and installing R as the first step as well. So for the people who are at UAB and who have an account in Cheaha, we already have RStudio installed as an interactive application. That's what we are going to be using for this tutorial. But for some reason, if you are at UAB and you don't have a Cheaha account and you just want to do something on your system rather than on Cheaha, follow through the first steps as well of downloading and installing R. And plus, if you're not at UAB and you're just following the video, then also please follow the first steps of downloading and installing R for your system.
Yep. Yeah, and so we can just skim over those real quick so you can see them. But yeah, it talks about the beginnings of just R and how it can be a little intimidating. And again, how Ravi said, this is the hello world of machine learning in R. But the first thing that you have to do is get R installed. we already have R installed on the cluster, and so for folks at UAB, you can just use your Cheaha account. For folks outside, just go through this tutorial on installing R. The version of R that we're going to use is, let's find it out. So this is our on-demand portal. You can go to rc.uab.edu if you have a Cheaha account, and if you don't, you can email us. And if you're outside of UAB, again, just install R on your machine. But if you go to Interactive Apps and then our Studio Server, you can see these are the R versions that we have. Today we're going to use 3.5.3, and his tutorial here says to use 3.2 or higher. So we're using 3.5, so hopefully that means we won't run into too many hiccups.
Yeah, and even for people who are installing R on their personal machine, try to install RStudio as well. RStudio is like a wrap around IDE for R language that provides you with a bunch of other functionalities, as you will see. You can also use just the R console, but in my experience, RStudio has a lot of functionalities which are really useful in using it. So
yeah, with the R console, you don't always see your visualizations immediately when you're writing them, and then you also have to be writing your scripts yet again in another program. RStudio lets you write scripts, run a console, and then also see the visualizations all in one place. Which is really
plus all
nice.
the variables that you have defined also come into another section.
Yeah. So if you have a Cheaha account, you go to rc.uab.edu, you go to Interactive Apps, RStudio Server, and then that will bring you here. For what we're doing today, I don't believe we're using the GPUs at all. So we're going to use the short partition, this 3.5.3, and we've asked for 2 CPUs with 4 gigs of RAM each, so that's about 8 gigs of RAM. So you can see we're not asking for a ton of computational power. This is totally something you could do on your laptop or local machine if you wanted to. And then we'll just click launch here. For the sake of time, we started one up just 10 minutes before we started here, so we're going to use that one. But we started it up in exactly the same way. Oh, and this one actually booted up pretty fast. So we could use either of these. So we'll use the one that we just started. Okay, so that's going to load us up RStudio on the cluster. There we go. All right, so you can see I've already been fiddling around with RStudio quite a bit. This is some previous analysis I've done using machine learning stuff. And you can see there's a nice little box plot over here in the corner. We're just going to get rid of that. I wonder if I can clear this.
CLC or something.
CLC, let's try that. Now let's see, let's look in session, clear workspace, there we go.
Just left on them lines.
And then, oh no, let's see, I want to also clear, that's okay, we can get started. All right, so first thing we got to do is we got to come down here to install packages, and we're going to just copy and paste this into our window. So install.packages, and so this caret package is a library which has a lot of the standardly used machine learning libraries in there. So I'm going to copy and paste that in there. And let's see, so one or more of these will be updated. All right.
We can actually show a brand new space where we can actually install the package.
Oh, do we want to do that? So cancel?
Yeah, cancel this.
Okay.
And
all right.
so what we are going to do is, so R has a definition of the library path where it's looking for all the packages that are installed.
Yeah.
R is also very finicky about what version of R you are using. And so the packages that you have, so if you have installed the packages for 3.5.2, there is a very good chance that it would not work for 3.5.3.
So that's what's going on. So
yeah, so what we'll do over here is we are going to define a space where we are going to be loading the latest libraries. So for that, let's just go to terminal first. And so we are in data user WS Monroe. Where can we put in our library?
Just anywhere is fine. Maybe in the RC-DSC.
Alright, so what we are going to do is we are going to create a space 3.5 r underscore 300.5.2 and look. So this is where we are going to place all our packages. So we have done that. Change directory. So we're going to print working directory. And then you go back to console. The method of checking what's the path that it's currently looking at is just typing in .libpaths, and it will show you that it's currently looking at this location as the path where it's going to save any packages that you're going to install, or if you're going to load some packages, this is where it's going to go first. We do not want to store anything over here, so because we have defined we have created a path where we are going to store all the packages. That's what we are going to change it to. So you do .libpaths and define the place where you want your packages to go to. And now when you check .libpaths, this is the first location that it's going to go to.
Excellent. Very cool.
And so now we do install load packages, caret.
All right, cool. So yes, so that happened partially because I've been using a bunch of different versions of R on the cluster. If this is your first time using R, you shouldn't experience that problem. But if, like me, you've been using R and then you updated to a different version, either on the cluster or on your machine, you may experience that same issue. So.
Yeah, it's generally a good idea whenever you are trying to install packages to have different paths for different versions of R. So, like we have created 3.5.2 actually. I should have put in 3.5.3 because that's what the R version is. But yeah, like if you were using 3.5.1, then you can create another of these paths, r underscore 3.5.1 underscore del.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to look back in the stream and do that for my different versions of R that I use. So you can see this looks really complicated, but R is really doing a lot of the hefty loading of or hefty lifting of installing stuff on its own. I'd say, I don't know, probably about 80% of the time, R does a really good job and you don't even have to think about it. There is probably 10 to 20% of the time where something goes wrong, or like what you saw right there at the very beginning where the library paths are kind of mixed up. All right, so it says that it did everything, but it said that it could not get the dependency of recipes. So it looks like we need to install recipes separately.
Yeah.
Let's see. So if you're having problems with the packages, you can install caret and all the packages you might need by typing this. All right, so let's try this and see if this will take care of that. Oh, that looks weird. Let's see if I can just copy just the one thing. There we go. Let's just give that a shot and see if that will find the recipes for us, so then we don't have to fiddle with it. While that's going, we can look up how to install, let's see, install recipes in R.
I like the suggestion when you were typing that install recipes in rice cooker.
In rice cooker, yes. I'd like to have some really interesting recipes installed on my rice cooker. All right.
So it has a dependency on dplyr, and
Yeah.
I think that was the thing that was causing the issue.
Okay.
Let's see if this one actually solves the dplyr. Otherwise, we might have to install it on our own.
Yeah.
I mean, R sometimes will give you these kind of dependency issues. Generally, it's a good idea to take a look at the log and see what's the first issue that it's seeing. Over here, the issue was that technically recipe was the one that wasn't getting installed, but recipe had an issue with the dplyr package that it found. So what we can do is you can reinstall dplyr and then install recipes and then come to caret. And that generally solves the issues. If you guys have any of those issues, come to the office hours and we can help you in installing the proper packages.
Yeah. Or if you're not at UAB, feel free to send us a message, and we will we'll see what we can do to help you out. I'm seeing if anybody's on our chat. I don't think anybody would be on our chat, but all right. So we're still loading.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, this is probably one of the reasons why R might tend to not have as much use as Python, because installing stuff is a little bit more of a headache, but hopefully we'll still get some good use out of it. And now it's just playing the waiting game. It seems like it's installing a lot more stuff with this version of the command than it did with the other one. So if you're watching this later, feel free to skip ahead about 30 seconds and see if we're done.
Try to install it beforehand.
Yeah, potentially. That may have been a good idea to install that ahead of time. And it's still good. Are you trying to install it on your machine over there?
Yeah, I'm trying to install it and see how long it takes over here, and if there is a way that I can transfer it, if it works fast.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is also an issue because we are starting from a very base
Oh,
library now.
because we created a new folder, it doesn't have anything
Yeah,
in there. But because we're in a new version of R,
we needed to have a
we
new
would
folder.
we would need a new folder anyway. I gotcha. Alright, so while that's loading up, we'll do this. We'll look at InspiroBot memes. Alright, so that's still installing over there. Make sure we didn't crash anything. Alright, still going. Alright, let's see if we get anything good over here. Hopefully nothing offensive. You are real estate agents. Okay. So InspiroBot uses natural language processing and generative networks to generate quote unquote inspirational memes. A lot of them end up being kind of true, but maybe pointless. Free speech is the future. Okay. Some of them are just, true, pointless. Some of them end up being kind of offensive. Sometimes it's just kind of, The best ones are the ones where it just fails. Humiliation has an impact on the earth. That's a pretty good one. Ride what you believe in. And it's still installing. So, again, I mean, this is part of the real work of data science, though, is just getting your environment set up.
Yeah. They don't have any.
Alright, well, another thing we can do while that's going is we can look what's in that carrot package. Alright, let's look up what is in carrot R. Okay, so apparently carrot stands for classification and regression training. So that sounds like this is going to be very similar to the scikit-learn examples that we've done so far, which is going to have decision trees, probably gradient boosting, probably random forests. Probably some support vector machines. Really making this RStudio work for its keep here.
What happens if we cancel this one and just on the previous one? And we just solve the issue.
And just solve the issue that it was facing.
Yeah, this is going to be like the booklet is going to try to install everything. Now it is now the dependencies.
Yeah. So let's see, just Control C.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can interrupt this.
Yes, you can just do that.
Do Control C those things.
Put it down to the check.
Alright. So in the Linux universe and in programming, a lot of times you can cancel out of a process by typing Control C.
And it's not. I just see it.
No, I can't either. So let's see if we can go to the session. Let's try this interrupt R. Here we go. Yes. Yes. All right. Oh, so let's
So we need to give it the dot pass again.
the dot lib pass again. Okay. So how does that go? You go dot lib pass,
Yeah,
and then the name of that folder. Just
data.
data user WS Monroe SC-DSC, and then we called it this one like that.
Yeah.
Then we can check our lib pass this way. Okay, and then we're just going to install dot packages caret like that.
Yeah.
All right, so it was taking forever on the other side because we were
So we need
installing everything. So it's saying dependency recipes, but it said dplyr not found.
Yeah,
So maybe if we go install dot packages dplyr,
yeah.
no or yes. No, let's try no. So copying that other function in here, I think was giving us kind of reinstalling a ton of stuff, as you saw.
Yeah, so our hope is that once we get away from that, we should have all the basic functionalities, or
Mhm.
even if we are missing something, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be part of a hello world example.
Yeah. Well, and if you noticed, when we were installing all of the dependencies, we had a lot of this red where it said downloaded, but we hadn't gotten to this part with the G++. This is where R is actually compiling the libraries and putting them in the right place.
Yeah.
So we hadn't even gotten to this step. And so this is taking this long for a 1 megabyte library.
Okay.
That probably would have taken a few. Do you think it would have taken hours to finish that install?
Easily. I'm just hoping that this one does.
Yeah. Hopefully this one
Exactly.
doesn't. Feel free to skip around until you figure out when it finished installing. Or start your install and then go get a cup of coffee.
Yeah. This is not very terribly exciting. Nothing to do with it. I mean, it is something to do with data science where you're setting up your environment.
Yeah.
Nothing that you need to be here and look at all this output for.
Yeah, this is a valuable skill for you to explore with your data science journey, but not the one that you normally shout from the rooftops, because this is just installing software and the headaches that go with that. But all right, this looks like we might be done. All right, sweet.
That is done.
So now we could just install Carrot again,
Yeah.
I think, and it should find that now it can install recipes.
Yeah, so it was.
All right, so I made it past that step.
Yeah. So now it's a carrot.
Yeah. All right.
It might not actually take an hour. I was like, I hope this method doesn't take an hour.
Yeah. Well, Ravi wins the Spirit Award for figuring out how to get Carrot installed in less than 5 hours. If any of you try the other method, please time it and let us know how long it ended up taking to install. All right, so now we can actually use the Carrot library. And so we just have to tell our studio to actually use it. So we'll do this. There we go. All right, so it couldn't find it.
Rlang, so we might need to update Rlang.
Okay.
Or
Rlang
I think
3.0.1
Rlang
is.
might just be a namespace. I think the package name is Lattice. Try installing Rlang and see. Actually, there is on RStudio. If you go next to plots,
Oh,
there
okay.
is packages as well. So you can search for Rlang. Yeah.
Okay, so we need port 4.
Yeah, and so I think it is. Why is it looking at 0.3.4?
We- Loading required package Lattice. Okay, so let's look up Lattice. Yeah, so we have Lattice already installed.
So we have two Rlangs. Maybe
let's
just
see.
get rid of the one that's. Yeah, let's get rid of this one. Oh, never mind. This is the older version. It's actually looking at 0.4.0. I'm not sure why it's having this issue.
Yeah, cannot be unloaded. All right. Let's look. Let's do some Googling here. So this is a similar rlang thing. Let's see, that's not the same deal. Problem with dplyr and rlang, okay. Okay, no, that doesn't look to be too helpful. Let's just see if we can get dplyr to show up. Okay, that one works.
Library rlang.
Okay. Interesting. So do we need to unload those other libraries?
Yes.
So we'll remove packages.
I think remove web packages, but
Oh, that just install it, not unload it.
Yeah.
Unload namespace. Let's see. So tidyr. Let's see if that. All right. So now, then theoretically, if I. Okay. We might have a lot of weird things going on here. All right. This doesn't seem like a good way to go. This seems kind of like this is not going to work the way we want it to. Let's see. What do you think, Ravi?
Just let's restart the R so that it would take out all these packages from our environment. You can do it from that orange button next to your name.
Of here? Okay. Okay, save workspace. No, don't save my workspace. Start new session. Alright, so here theoretically we have caret installed, right?
Well, I mean, we have to load.
Oh, we have to load our
.lib paths.
there. And then we do library.
First do rlang.
rlang.
Yeah. Now,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Alright.
So we had loaded some libraries, I think, earlier, and that's why.
Yeah. Okay, so the moral of the story is if it's not working, try to install a thing it says it doesn't have. If it's still not working and it has different dependencies going on, restart R.
Yeah, I mean, if your workspace becomes too convoluted or too polluted, then yeah, restart R. That's going to restart your entire workspace. So you're like starting from scratch in your workspace. That also means that if you had any variables, if you're running a script and you had some variables that were loaded, those would go out of your environment as well. So you might have to begin from the beginning of your script.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to load the data. So the data set we're going to use is this iris flowers data set. This is a data set that is prepackaged with a lot of analysis toolbox. I think it's in the sklearn data sets. If you click on this, we can look on Wikipedia about it. But it basically has some basic measurements about these 3 different flowers, and just trying to get computers to recognize which species of this iris flower it is based on these measurements. And so we're going to come down here, and we can load the CSV, but for the sake of making things simple, we're just going to load the data set this way here. And if you're interested in loading the CSV file, you can load it this way, down here under 2.2. Alright, so data iris. Alright, and then we're just going to rename the data set for our later use. Okay.
And in the right hand corner you can see all the environment variables that are being loaded. So you have 2 variables now, iris and a data set.
Yeah, and under each one you can see these are just copies of the other one, and this is the data that we have in each different column.
Yeah.
So each data set here has 5 different variables with these different names associated with it. And then let's see. Alright, so we're going to, as we've done in previous times, we're going to create a validation data set so that we have some data that we haven't done any modeling on, so that we can test how generalizable our models are. So the first thing here is we're going to create a data partition, and that's what this does. Okay.
And that should come into the environment as well.
Yep. So now you see that's in here, and basically this just gives me a number of indices.
Yeah, and one thing that you'll notice is that validation index is from 1 to 120.
Yep.
And so we had in total 150 observations, and that was because we defined it to be just the 80% of the data set needs to be in validation.
Yep. So what we can do, and this is a really neat thing that R does, is so you can see that we're going to create this validation as a subset of the data set, and we're going to use the validation index, but this negation parameter means basically to use the indices that aren't assigned here, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically it's like the ultimate validation is just going to be 20% of the entire value. So negative is just removing all the 80% of it.
Yep.
So if you see on the data now, you'll see that there are 30 observations in RStudio on the right hand side.
Yep.
So that's how much you need for validating your model.
Yep. And then we're going to specify the rest of the data set here. So you can see now our data set has 120, our validation has 30, and then we have this iris, which is untouched, that has everything in it. And then, so just like we've seen in pandas, R has some nice tools for summarizing the data sets. So we can look at the dimensions of our data set, so how many features there are.
And just keep in mind that most of this tutorial, the Hello World tutorial, has been for R console, not for RStudio. Like in RStudio, you could already see that it has 120 observations, but in R console, you don't have this view.
Yeah.
And so this is how you can check data set if you're just running it in our console.
Yeah, and then also you see just like that, if you wanted to see the class from the console, you can see it with this sapply, which just says apply this function to this data set. And so you could see that over here as well, so we're not going to run that. And then there is this nice, just like in pandas, there's this nice head command, so we can run that. And that gives us the first 5 or so rows, I guess 6.
Yeah, and again, if you see in data set, it also shows you that 5.1, 3.5, 1.4, 0.2. So now you see some of the power of having an IDE or this RStudio wrapper IDE around our language.
Yeah.
Where some of these things where you have to take a look at data, you have a peek at data. Some of the very basic things are available. There are still a lot of functions that will give you way more information than what you will get in this environment. But yeah, just to have some small peek at the data set, this gives you some of it without using any of the functions.
Yeah, it really helps you understand your data before you're gonna start doing things. All right, so we're still chunking away at the data. So this is gonna tell us how much of, I think we can copy both of these. So this will give us a table of the frequency that each different species is seen. So this is a really nice thing that R does. So I think in Python with pandas, you would go like dataset dot species to look at this column. In R, it's very similar. You just do dataset $species, and then that will show this one here. And so you can see that there's, out of the 120, there's 40 in each category, which ends up being a third of the data set is each particular flower. And then this is another really nice function, this summary function. So you can take a data frame in R and just type summary, and then it will give you the max, min, median, the quartiles, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's similar to the describe function that we had in pandas. And so this tells you that most of the things that you can do in Python, you can also do in R, and that shows you one of the reasons why R is also one of the major languages used in data science.
Yeah. All right, and then let's just visualize this real quick. So what this does is, that doesn't look right. Hang on a second here. Oh, I think we got it in there.
Yeah.
The copying went weird, but so you can see this data set and then 1 through 4. So this said copy my first 4 columns to X and my 5th column to Y. So Y is the variable that we're trying to predict. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a box plot for each one of those parameters. All right, so you see we have our 4 different parameters, and we're not doing anything with Y right now. We're just creating a box plot to see the distribution of what each one of these different things in X is, which X is the length, width, petal length, and petal width. All right, so we got the same plot, which is nice. And then again, we could plot Y if we wanted to see the class breakdown. And of course, it shows us what we've already seen, which is that there's 40 in each group.
I think there is an arrow as well if you wanted to see both in our studio. Near the plot, I think it saves both the plots.
Saves both plots. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Alright. Let's try this feature plot. That's kind of interesting. I've never used this feature plot before. Okay, so we're getting some kind of weird thing here. Feature plot. Okay, there we go. Alright, so it looks like we might have to do some additional troubleshooting if we wanted to get these kind of plots to show up. The scatter plot matrix. So we might have to dive into that a little bit more, but even just this is nice. So this shows us each one of our parameters here, or our features, and then how that's related to each class. So it definitely looks like there's some trends present. Alright, so what we've got is similar to this feature plot box, but let's see if this one will actually plot for us. Okay, so that one worked. Okay. Let's go. Let's see if this one works. Okay, so that one also worked. That's pretty nice too.
Yeah, there's distribution of each plot.
Yeah. And so you can see in R the power of this visualization aspect that we mentioned, or you can have this feature plot, and then you tell it what type of plot you want and what the scales should look like, and it just kind of works. So that you have a lot of flexibility and power in the visualization aspect for sure. All right, so now at this point, we've been at this for a while and struggled with the installation. So I think we're gonna stop and take a 15-minute break and break this into a second video.
Yeah.
So that we can get in the machine learning. So then we'll have 2 videos this week. So if you're watching the stream, go get a cup of coffee or a bottle of water, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes.